Hello beautiful people, how are you all doing today? I hope you're well. It's the end of month 63. Oh my giddy goodness. Same old, where has this month gone? Time's going too quickly, blah blah blah. But this month, it's been a bit of an odd one for me. Yeah, it's felt really odd, and I felt it's been hard to put my finger on it, how I feel, and also the causes of it. And I think it's because it's no one thing, no one feeling, and no one particular cause. So I'm going to try to work out everything that's happened to make it feel so odd. And by the way, this isn't it's not one of those. It's, you know, everything's okay, I'm perfectly happy. It's just, I haven't quite felt like me all month. I have been me in moments, but yeah, this has been really disconcerting. And I think there's a number of factors. And like I said, this is not negative, it's not sad, it's not any of that. It's just a bit like, huh? What happened? Yesterday evening, I was trying to think about how to phrase what I'm going to try and talk about. And it's like, I don't know how to put it. But it's almost like all month, I've been beside myself. I don't mean beside myself, I'm beside myself. I mean, I've been kind of like one step away from me. So I've been kind of walking along with me all month, but I haven't been in me. Or I've been on a side track, going back to the trains. It's like my train split in half and I was in the wrong half of the train. Oh, by the way, thank you everybody for your incredibly kind words and kind response to the last video about Auntie Teapot's last little trip with us. And actually, there were quite a few bits and bobs that I didn't manage to get into that video that I'd love to talk about. So I'm going to do a little chatty video to catch up on those bits. Plus, and I'm looking because I've got a little pile of props next to me, all sorts of other bits to talk about too, but that's another day. Yeah, so this month, I think the best way to put it is to feel like I never really got going. I don't drive a car, so I can't do that analogy, but it's like I wasn't in the right gear. I was always in a gear too low, or the one below the gear that you need to be in, whatever it is. It just didn't, July just didn't ever really happen. It's hard to explain. You know this thing about, as you get older, time goes more quickly. Yes, it does. How weird is that? But yes, it does. So the month has kind of flown. In some ways, it's flown by. What happened in July? I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything in July. So it ought to have gone really slowly. I think part of it is that as I came into July, and I don't want to over-egg this, but I definitely had some residual post-viral fatigue, and I think I still have that to a degree. So I kind of started the month off slightly on the back foot, slightly, just a little bit tired, a little bit flat. But of course it's my birthday right at the beginning of the month, so that pepped me up. Yay! Really happy, had some absolutely fantastic phone calls and FaceTime on the computer. Some friends I haven't spoken to for ages, like years. And oh my goodness, it just filled me with so much joy and love. And it did fill me with energy. It did fill me with energy. But that energy never manifested itself physically. Does that make sense? It's that kind of, I was fizzing and buzzing and whoa, but it didn't translate into, oh, let's now do 12 hours in the garden that didn't happen. So the birthday was lovely, thoroughly enjoyed it. And the other thing is I had loads of things lined up for about 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of July. Loads of things in terms of, oh, by the way, so excuse my head and my hair, I've been watering the garden after an absence. Water the garden and I'm all sweaty headed. Yeah, I had quite a few meetups and stuff lined up with various friends. But suddenly everyone is going down with COVID. So all of me and all my friends, we've all avoided it for 2 and a bit years. And then suddenly, we're all getting it. I think because everyone's sort of attitude is, oh, well, COVID's done now, let's be normal. And COVID isn't done. I'm not going to labour that point because I know some people will not like that. But yeah, so quite a few of my meetups and doing things got cancelled last minute as people were testing positive. So maybe that threw a little something into the mix. And then, of course, I mean, since the end of June, we have had above average temperatures. I don't want to labour the point about that one particularly hot day because apparently I'm not allowed to say I'm hot anymore because apparently I'm not hot according to other people. But yeah, it's been really quite a hot July. And with that, I think it's normal, isn't it, that when you're... I mean, the other thing to mention is it could be 26 degrees outside, which is lovely and pleasant, but in the flat it's 32 as a minimum. I'm just checking now, my thermostat is now saying 28.9, and I think that's the lowest it's been for the whole of July. The temperature in the flat has been 30 plus all of July. And I think that's just taken my edge off. We all know, even those of you who live in hotter places than me, and even those who live in colder places than me, that when you're living in 30 plus degrees, it takes your edge off. It makes you a bit floppy, a bit more tired than you might otherwise feel. And even if you're, like I was saying about that birthday buzz and that energy that all my friends gave me in conversations, part of the reason that didn't translate into doing energy, as in physical doing stuff energy, was because, I mean, I get up to do something and then within 2 minutes I'd be like, oh, I'm sweating, so that was a little bit of a curveball. But I think one of the big things for the whole of July, I just had a momentary gulp in the back of my mind, was because I knew I had this little trip planned with my sister for the end of July to go and collect Auntie Teapot. And obviously I was looking forward to spending time with my sister, and I was looking forward to some seaside time. I was looking forward to a train trip. I love me some train travel. I was looking forward to chips on the beach. Oh, so many things to look forward to. I was looking forward. But it was all underpinned, I think, by... There were two things underpinning it that made it a little bit... just a little bit stressy. I mean, not a major stress, you know what I mean. But listen, there are people... I know there are people living with much more stress. But firstly, issues with the railways. We've had strikes going on, new strikes being threatened, but also engineering works. It's the summer, they do the engineering works, and I knew that the line at the back of me and the line down there, I knew they were both going to be out. At one point, I didn't think I was even going to get to Canterbury because the line to West Canterbury was completely out. In the end, I actually had to take a taxi from my flat out to Bromley, so that's 15 quid I didn't need, but never mind, because all my local lines were out for engineering. So that was kind of on my mind, and, you know, my sister had driven down from Yorkshire, and she kept saying, look, if there's a strike, I'll come to London and pick you up. But I didn't want to have her driving all the way from Yorkshire, then having to come into London. You know, the time it takes to drive from Yorkshire down here, that time again it would take her to just come a few miles into London to collect me. I didn't want that at all, especially bearing in mind she'd just got over COVID, and I knew she was going to be really tired. I did not want to add to her stress and her tiredness. So that was on my mind a little bit. But the biggest thing, of course, that was on my mind was knowing that this could quite possibly be my last trip down there. It was on my mind that I was going to go to the funeral parlour to collect her. It was on my mind that I was going to be going to her old town and maybe even going and looking at her little bungalow again. And I wanted to do all these things, but I was just kind of, I think, wary about how the emotions would be. You know, last year, she died in March, beginning of March. I spent the whole of March crying, and that was fine, and kind of organising things. But then after the funeral at the end of March, I had a very much a kind of a business head on. I had to deal with all her affairs, get everything tied up, see all the family members right with her estate, So I don't think there was ever really a time where I felt it was just me and her. I could have my me and her time. Because it was always just me and her, you know. So I think that had played on my mind all month. And now that I think about it, now we've come through that little bit, the more I think about it now, the more I realise actually that probably dictated almost the whole of July to me. Never mind the heat, never mind my birthday. It was just this knowing that at the end of July I am going to go and collect her. And it was I'm so glad we had the trip we had. We went to her favourite places. I'm filming this today. She's still not in her final resting place. She will get there, well, actually I'm not sure exactly when she'll get there because I now have to arrange things with my uncle to take her to the woods. But anyway, she's well on her way and I'm so glad we did it, and it was really wonderful, it was just perfect. And there were moments on the trip that I didn't film, and like I said in the last video, private. A couple of moments that were needed. Let's just say that they were needed. So in a way, the whole thing was very cathartic. I think there's still a little bit more of that to go. I think the perfect thing was, at least for my part of the trip, ending it at Hyde Hall at the garden, because Teapot and I, we love our gardens. You know, that was her thing. When I was, I cleared the house a few years ago when things went a bit AWOL. So I knew where most things were because I'd had to clean things out, put things back. But a few years ago when I'd done that, I hadn't properly looked at newspaper clippings. So this time around last year, when I was finally deciding, right, what's going to charity, what is going to different family members, what would I like to keep, and I've got a little packet in the bureau of newspaper clippings of her winning prizes, gardening prizes. Oh, sorry, excuse me, I stopped myself. Yeah, for, you know, prize chrysanthemums and what have you. So yeah, she adored gardening. She adored her garden. She could name everything in her garden, even though she wouldn't get out there anymore. Honestly, it was an overgrown jungle, and I worked my butt off to clip it back and make it something she could recognise as being what she planted all those years ago. And that day I managed to persuade her to sit in a wheelchair. She refused a wheelchair for, I don't know, 3-4 years. And then I just bought one anyway. I thought, stuff you, I'm buying one. Got her in it. We'd built a ramp from the back of the house. It was only maybe a foot drop with some steps, but she couldn't manage the steps. So I built a ramp, took her down the wheelchair into her garden. She could see all her apple trees again, named them all. Yeah, that was lovely. Gardening together. There was that time, I don't know, I've lost track of the years. It's like 3 or 4 years ago when we did the Witch gardening magazine. They had a little trial they wanted people to do. They sent out seeds. Auntie Teapot ordered some seeds, so we sowed them together. But her fingers were riddled with arthritis by then, so I filled all the pots with compost outside in the potting conservatory, brought it all in to her little table that she has in front of her, those little swingy tables. Some of the seeds were quite small to manage, but some of the bigger seeds, where she could just about, got her putting seeds in the soil again. That was so lovely. And, it might be between visits. I might be there on a Tuesday and I'm not due back till Thursday or Friday because I'm working. But if it was a night shift during the daytime, she'd phone me and she'd say, oh, the calendula are coming up, or, oh, the tomatoes are sprouting, what have you. So lovely. So to finish the little trip with that visit to Hyde Hall was so perfect because, yeah, she'd have loved it. And what's really lovely is we're in the dry garden area. We'd been walking around for a bit, and I was kind of ready for a sit down. I didn't say anything. My sis recognised it and she was like, should we have a sit down? I was like, oh yeah, why not? Oh, thank God for that. And there's a bench made from driftwood so it's perfect. So it's all dried and sun-bleached wood. It's beautiful. Looking out over the dry garden. But there was a lady sitting on the end of it and I was like, oh, should we sit somewhere else? She's having her quiet time. There was nowhere else to go. So we sort of walked into that little bit of area and I said, do you mind if we sit alongside you? She's like, no. So we sat down and it was all quiet. I had a glug of water and yeah, it was just quiet for a few moments. And then the lady on the end, she said, this is my favourite bit of the garden. This is where I always sit. I was like, oh, okay, Now, the funny thing is, she was an older lady. I don't know how old. Mop of white hair. I don't think she wasn't in her 90s, not that old, but mop of white hair, sat there with her stick and kind of, plumpish. Physically, she looked like Auntie Teapot. And yeah, she's a member of the RHS and she comes to the garden regularly, sees it through all the different seasons. So we had a little chat and it was lovely. And I said, at one point I apologised. I said, I didn't want to interrupt your reverie. This is your quiet space. And she said, oh no, it's nice to talk to folk because I live on my own. And I'm sitting there thinking, Auntie Teapot's just been reincarnated. It's bizarre. So, yeah, we had a lovely little chat and then we all, went our separate ways. But, yeah, it was so special. Teapot would have loved it. I kind of feel like she was there anyway. So, yeah, back to, sorry, just like tangent. Back to July. Back to July and living without a wage and being as self-sufficient as possible, etc., etc. Yeah, it's been a weird month. I've never quite got up to speed and got into gear this month. It's been a really dreamy, weird time. And I think so much of that was to do with doing these last few days. And now I feel that kind of clarity and some energy coming back and what have you. But in terms of, living without a wage and self-sufficiency, I haven't touched my shop all month. You can't see it, it's everything's stacked up in the window waiting to be photographed. I've got a ton of new stock. Normally I would try to add stock at least every fortnight or so, sometimes even weekly. I haven't done anything for weeks and weeks and weeks. I've still got this big hole on the shelf. There's more books over there waiting to go into the shop than will fit on the shelves. So that's been completely neglected. No sewing. I did do some curtains for someone. God, how I loathe curtain making. Did that. Otherwise, I've kind of kept up with my video making, but otherwise, literally all that's happened in July is me doing that continuous catch up to plant the garden. You know, in July, I planted me tomatoes, for goodness sakes. They should have been done at the end of May, beginning of June, never mind. The good thing in July was I managed to finish planting the garden, apart from the next planting, which is the brassicas, which it still hasn't happened. But I got everything planted, and I've been going to the garden almost every day for watering. Oh, the great thing is, just before I went away, I gave everything a really, really deep soak. Everything's in the ground. I still had a few things in pots, the brassicas, so I really soaked them and actually left a bit of water left them sitting in water, then covered them all with shade netting and just hoped it would be enough. Having been back to the garden to water now, everything has survived. A few things looked a bit grumpy with me, a bit floppy, but it all survived. So the great takeaway from this month is I've just about managed to plant a garden this year and keep it alive. It's going to be a later harvest for everything than I've ever had in other years, but that's okay because, for instance, with the tomatoes, no sign of rain, so hopefully no blight. I can harvest into September, October. Yeah, it looks like I will get a harvest, but it will be later. Of course, that means that last year's harvests, the bits in the freezer, they are running really low to almost nothing left from last year. I've got all the dried beans. I've got a ton of dried beans. But otherwise, yeah, just about, I think I'm just about going to hang in there till the next harvest. As in, when I say harvest, obviously I'll be picking a few bits and pieces individually over the coming weeks, but like the big harvests where I harvest them to store them for the coming year. So, you know what, I think it's going to be okay. Oh, little hiccup. It's whittling on, phone rang. What was I saying? Yes, I think I'm going to be okay in terms of the garden. The only thing I've got some doubts about are the winter garden in terms of the brassicas. I don't know whether it's all too late. You know what? It's fine. It's fine. There will be chard. The chard is getting away nicely, and that's a great one throughout the winter. Put it this way, I think for my last year in this garden, when at times I honestly didn't think I was going to get a garden at all, I think it's going to be okay, and I'm going to be happy with what I get. Whatever I get from it will make me happy. The other thing in the last couple of months, and you know, going away and being in Canterbury and Whitstable and all these lovely places, is over the last few months, ideas have started to cement about when I move house, about my must-haves and my negotiables. I remember, I don't know, back in May or so, my sister was there sending me loads of details of different properties around the country. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I love it here. I want to stay here, but, you know, price-wise, I might be priced out. And at the time, I was saying, you know what, even if I don't get a garden, I don't care. The most important thing is a home on the ground floor, da-da-da. What's really, really apparent, you know what, you guys probably guessed this straight away months ago, but what's become apparent to me is I have to have a garden of some sort. Even if it's a tiny little yard, half the size of my kitchen, just somewhere, and never mind even growing things, somewhere that I can have a chair outside in the fresh air, in the sunshine, to sit, listen to birds, whatever it is, I have to have an outside space. So all these flats in, you know, beautiful historic buildings which get converted, like these big old manor houses that get converted and made into 6 different apartments. Why do they call them apartments? I don't know. With beautiful communal grounds, and it's not for me. I need my own little space. So yeah, that's been cemented definitely on this last trip we had. The size of my property, you know, doesn't matter too much, but it has to have a little bit of garden. What an odd month. What a peculiar month. So I was drifting back into the peculiarity of this month. Okay, so bottom line, someone living without a wage and being self-sufficient as much as possible in food. Have I managed it for another month? Yes, by the skin of my teeth, in terms of living without a wage. You know, I feel, looking back on July, that so much time has been wasted not getting on with, say, the shop and stuff like that. But on the other hand, it's like, hang on a minute, you know, recovering from COVID, the heat, give myself a break. Okay, I didn't make any money in July. I mean, I made money from the YouTube, that would pay the bills, but otherwise, no money made. That's okay, because I know that I have the skills, the work ethic, whatever, to make up for it as we go along. The garden, the food, it's not going to be as much as previous years, partly because of rejigging the garden so that the bean beds are in the beds, not the paths, so I've lost a couple of beds. There's a couple of beds that I haven't dug yet. They may never get dug this year, so I may have lost another couple of beds, and the onion harvest is going to be dismal. I don't know what went on with the onions this year, but it looks like tomatoes, squash, that should be good. Beans, I'll tighten my belt. I'll make the most of whatever I get. That's the bottom line always, isn't it? Is make the most of whatever you get. And I think for a couple more days, I'm just kind of playing catch up with myself at home, trying to go gently, catch up. But then as I go into August, I need to be full pelt with the garden, be economic with my time in the garden, get there, get it watered, do the jobs, whatever it is, get out, get home and get back on with, just that you can't see, it's all behind you. There are just piles and piles and piles and piles of things for all the stuff I do outside of the garden that needs my attention, all stuff I'm looking forward to doing, but I don't know, it just hasn't happened. Look, you know what, in July, it just didn't happen. That's it. It didn't happen. So apparently I can be superhuman for 62 months, but come to month 63, no longer superhuman. I'm kidding, I've never been superhuman. So, it's okay. It's all okay. Like the sign in my shed says, it's all going, oh no, everything is going to be okay. August is going to be about just getting back, you know, I was saying I've been on this side track, is getting back onto the main track, getting myself in gear, that's me doing gears, getting myself in the right gear and going full steam ahead again. July was a blip. We're all allowed a blip every now and again. I'm not beating myself up. There's no point. What would be the point of me kind of getting grumpy with myself, saying, you've done nothing, you've wasted a month, this, that, There's no point. There's no point in doing that. It's like, you know what? That's the way it panned out. That's okay. It wouldn't be okay to do that for another month. But you know what? For that month, it was okay. You got over that big emotional hurdle, which was the end of the month. Done that. Ready to roll my sleeves up and get on again. And on that note, I'm going to get on again. There's other stuff to do, there's piles to sort, there's work to do, there's more watering to do. Not today. So I'll see you all again really soon, I hope. I think, you know what, I think next time, even though it's only been 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks since I did the July garden tour, because I've been in catch-up all year, let's do a garden tour so I can show you what's happened to my pathetic little plants in the space of the last 2.5, nearly 3 weeks or so. So I will see you next time in the garden. Please do join me in the garden, because you know what? I think even if you're not a gardener, I was thinking about this on the trip too, even if you're not a gardener, sitting in a garden, doesn't everybody feel better for that? Just sitting quietly, looking, hearing, smelling. Yeah. Okay, so join me in the garden for the next one. But until then, please look after yourselves, look after each other, go somewhere to sit and be. Cheerio.